All right, let's go ahead and get started. So this is what we're going to talk about today with you. And we want to go through and give you some examples of things that have worked well in the past with other organizations, things that will help you that you can sort of use as takeaways. And we're going to give you a lot of information. It might feel a little bit overwhelming, but we're also going to try to point out specific things that you can do that are easy, kind of quick takeaways for your website. So we're going to talk about messaging and how to be transparent with your users coming to your website, reducing the clutter, how to incentivize your users to take action, keeping your website up to date, how to optimize your donation page, and implementing user testing to make sure everything works correctly. So let's jump in. So the first thing that you really should think about with your website is content is important. Your messaging is what people are reading and what people are seeing, and having content that's going to be both valuable as well as clear is very important to your organization. So when you think about a visitor coming to your website, you're going to want to think about what are they seeing right away. When they go to the website, are they looking at an image? Are they looking at a header? Are they looking at a button? What grabs their attention first? So I'm going to show you an example. This is one.org, and I like this website because it shows very clearly what the organization does without a lot of additional information. So when you go to this website, you see their logo, you see exactly who they are, and you know that they fight poverty, and that's exactly where your eye goes. So they have the tagline up by their logo, but they also have it on this header here, the header banner, which I think is very effective in clearly communicating this is what we do, this is what our mission is. And the other reason I like this website is because it shows that they are involved in a larger cause. It's not just talking about their organization or their programs, but it's tying their organization to this cause of fighting poverty. The second thing you should think about is your About page, especially when we were doing our research surrounding millennials. Millennials typically really want to know who you are, what you do, and find out some more information about you. And so this is your chance to take the About page and give people some additional information to show them exactly what your organization is doing. So this is an example, and I know that Charity Water is pointed out as a great organization and a great website all the time, but I'm going to just jump on that bandwagon and show you as well. This is their About page, and the reason that I like this is it clearly has that statement up top of this is what we do, but then you also have the chance to click on read our mission statement and find out more information. So you're going to read that sentence and you're going to know exactly who they are, and then if you want more information, you have that option as well. You can meet the staff, the founder, the board, all of that, and this is not the only way you can do it, but I think it's a good example of getting that information about who you are across quickly and easily. And another way you could do it is have staff bio pictures and their bios right on that page. You could list the board. It doesn't necessarily have to click over like this one does, but it's one way of making it effective. Think about speaking to your visitor on your website. You know your organization so well. You know what you do and who you are and your programs and who works there. But when you're speaking to people on a website, they might be coming there for the first time. So think about your language in terms of how would you communicate to someone who knew nothing about your organization? How would you talk about it? What kind of language would they understand that's outside of a lot of internal jargon? So think about being conversational and not too technical when you're writing the content for your website. Building trust. This is a big one, and we've seen this a lot from our millennial research. There's a lot of information that people want to see before they trust and are loyal to your organization. So things like showing your financials and your annual reports and your programs and how many dollars are being used and your revenue breakdown, all of that is very, very important to build this sort of loyalty and just commitment to your organization. So it is specific to millennials, but it's also important for all of your constituents. So here's an example of World Wildlife Fund. And this is their financial page. And one of the reasons I like this is they show their operating revenue straight on this page rather than having to download the full annual report. And I think this is great because it shows that they're extremely transparent. They're trying to communicate effectively where the money is going. So when you donate, you know exactly how their breakdown is going to shake out. And lastly, ensure your content is more about education than self-promotion. And what we mean by this is think about the larger cause that your organization is working towards. So for going back to the One.org example, they're fighting against poverty. So don't focus too much on your own specific organization, but rather drive people to the larger cause that you're contributing to.
All right, so our next section is reducing the clutter. And this is an area that can be a little bit overwhelming, and but something that I like to talk about a lot. So bear with me. We're going to kind of go through just a few things that you can do right off the bat to help with this and make your site a lot more effective. So first of all, give visitors the information they need quickly. Today, people are spending less and less time on websites, especially with the use of smartphones more and things like that. People want stuff fast. They're in a hurry and they're coming to your site for a specific reason, whether it be to volunteer, donate, or just get to know you. So they're not wanting to fish through your site for information. They want to get to stuff really fast. So basically, we want to make sure overall in this why we're trying to reduce clutter, that we're just thinking about how can we get people to where they want to be the quickest. So one way to do this is using more images and less text. It's really easy to create pages with tons and tons of information, kind of describing whether it's what you do or the different areas of what you do or things like that. It's really easy to talk long and lots of words. So one way to help reduce the clutter and get people information quickly is to use more imagery and use short, concise information. This is one really, really, really important thing when it comes to making sure your site, again, is accessible to a lot of people and information is accessible really, really quickly. Next, I'm sorry, here's an example of the National Breast Cancer Foundation. This is a really good way of using really bright imagery and not a lot of, like I said, a lot of heavy text right off the bat. It's very clear, very pretty, and it also has a lot to do with emotion as well. Using imagery can really help get your message across even more so than a lot of words can. This is a really good example of that. Another way to reduce the clutter is provide clear navigation and minimal pages. So again, back to getting information quickly, keep your navigation items really, really clear. Don't clutter up the navigation area, and then keep pages to a minimum as well. In most cases, sites don't need to be more than about 10 pages of actual copy. So I'm not talking about news feeds or blogs. I'm mainly talking about main pages of content. There's very rarely a case where it needs to be more than about 10 pages. So think about that on your sites. Go through and see if there's anything you can take away and eliminate completely off your site. Another way to do that too is to take a look at your analytics and see if there's anything that people are just never getting to that could help just remove some unnecessary pages and maybe move that information to a different area in your site to take away lots of different pages. We already talked about this, but it's just nice to kind of go back to it because it's important for the same with reducing the clutter, keeping the homepage very clean. We keep harping on it, but that's really important. If people come to your homepage and there's just so much going on with a whole bunch of different images and information and text and feeds, and they're going to get overwhelmed really fast, and they're also going to get confused on where you want them to go first. So again, keep the homepage clean. Here's another really good example of that. Again, imagery, the navigation's really, really clear, and then there's just 3 areas at the bottom and a search box. So it's very much, when you get here, if you're looking to volunteer, donate books, or donate funds, you know exactly where you want, where people want to go. So they don't have to think too much, which is the goal. Don't hide your contact information. So this is a very simple thing that you can think about and probably implement pretty easily. A lot of times, I'm sure you've experienced this before, you go to a site and you're just wanting a phone number or an address or a way to contact somebody to get in touch. Make sure that your contact information is really accessible, because a lot of times people are actually just coming to your site to get that. So whether it's put contact us in the navigation, or even putting some contact information down in the footer for people to access. That's something that's simple to implement right off the bat, but also really, really important. And a lot of people miss this one, so that's a good one. Fix the broken. So this might be kind of obvious, but one thing that's super important is that you're constantly monitoring for broken links, misspellings, errors of any kind. Again, this seems obvious, but a lot of sites experience this, and if someone does see something like this that's broken, there's a good chance that you're going to lose a lot of credibility, and you may just lose them completely because they're going to become frustrated. So again, kind of obvious, but just make sure that you're constantly looking for those issues and make sure they're fixed. It does have a bigger impact than you even probably would realize on your visitors. So, all right.
All right. Now let's talk about action. This is exciting and good stuff because every organization wants the people coming to their website to actually take an action when they get there. So whether we're talking about donating or volunteering, we want them to get involved in a deeper way than just visiting the website. So on each page, tell your visitors where you want them to go next. And Katie sort of alluded to this earlier, but we want to think about when they land on the homepage, what is it that you really want them to do from there? So are you interested, is your main goal to get them to the blog, to get them educated about your cause and what you're doing? Or maybe your main goal is to get them to volunteer or donate. Just think about that, and sometimes it's helpful to have someone outside your organization go take a look at your website and, ask them what stands out to you the most, what's grabbing your attention, where would you go from here, and do a little bit of your own kind of unofficial user testing to see their reaction to your website. This is an example of a bicycle advocacy group, and I like this homepage because similar to the Indie Reads one, it clearly shows on the right-hand side, donate, join, or volunteer. And so they want membership. They want people to be a part of their group, and they also need volunteers and donations. So it's very clear of how you can get involved with this organization. Make donating easy. I cannot harp on this enough. This is the most important thing on your website. And of course, we're a little biased because we do a lot of fundraising at Achieve. But we want people to give you money. Don't make it difficult. Don't make it hard to find the donation button or find the donation page. Make it super duper easy. And I'm going to talk a little bit more at the end about how to optimize your donation page. But when you are on the homepage, for example, there should be a very clear button, maybe in the top navigation or on the sidebar of donate now. It should be bright and it should be big text. I would say probably 25 point or larger to make sure that people see it. And the last thing you want is someone who's interested in your organization coming to donate and they can't do it because they can't find where to do it. So this is extremely important, extremely important. We can't press that enough. And similar note, make volunteering easy, especially when we were doing our user testing for the Millennial Impact Report. A lot of times people go to a website and they're interested in getting involved, but it's very difficult to figure out and navigate the website on how to do that. So one of the big pet peeves that we saw from our research is, if I love your organization and I want to help, make it easy for me to volunteer. And this could be as simple as just having a form on your website where someone can fill out their information and then you follow up with some contact. It doesn't need to be, or maybe just a click to an email. So if you have a button that says volunteer and then it connects to their email, it doesn't have to be too complicated in terms of content, but you do want to make it really easy for your users. Include social media links. So this is important, and this is an action that we often want to push from the homepage. We think of the homepage as sort of the hub for your organization. If someone's looking for information, they're probably going to Google, and they're probably going to find your website first. So once they're there, you want to show them, hey, here's how you can also follow us on Facebook or see our Twitter feed, and they're going to get useful information about your cause and maybe some educational materials. And it's a way to push resources to them in a different way than the website would. But do think of your website as the hub. It's most likely the first place someone's going to go to try to find information about your organization. Make it shareable. We love this because this is a great way to build your brand awareness, but it's also a great way for your advocates, people out there who love your organization, to promote it to their friends. So one of the things that we talk a lot about with our research is how to get people involved with your organization, and this is one of the great ways to do that, because if especially with millennials, if they don't have the resources to donate, they probably have the resources to volunteer, and so they're also more likely to volunteer and get involved with an organization if it's recommended by a friend or a family member. So if you are able to have a blog post or a photo or a story of someone that you've helped, and you're able to make it shareable, you're extending your reach to not only that person who's really interested in that story, but then they're also able to share it with their friends and say, hey, look at this organization, look at this great stuff that they're doing, and you're building a really strong base that way. Use action words. The reason that we talk about this is, we want your website to be pushing people to not only to take action themselves, but to see that you're an active organization, and they want to feel that energy and that movement when they're at your website through the language that you're using. So use action words, make it fun, make it, we helped this person, look at, this stuff that we're doing, here's how you get involved. All of that is going to just help kind of show your impact.
All right, next section is keep it current. So as many of you probably know, we do a lot of research around millennials, and our most recent report showed that 75% of our respondents find not having a website kept up to date is one of their biggest pet peeves with websites in general, with organizations. So this is a big one, and sometimes this can be, again, kind of the same thing with the clutter thing, a little bit overwhelming and stressful, just because it's a lot of work and you've got to donate, or you've got to dedicate time to doing that. So, but it's really important, and there's just a few things. It's a pretty simple concept, but it's really important to make sure when people are going to your site that you are keeping things up to date. So obviously the best way to do this is with anything that has a date associated with it. Make sure that it's updated on a regular basis. So think about things like your blog, if you have one, news feeds, calendars, and that said, event feeds, anything that has a date. If people go to your site and see something dated months ago as the last post, they're going to probably leave or just not. Basically, it's also a credibility thing. So if you show that you're constantly doing things, it just shows your activity and things like that. I mean, people are going to be more engaged and more motivated to be part of what you're doing if you show progress. So it's, again, a big one. Here's an example of a calendar on another organization website. Very clean, simple, but as you can see, like, it shows the most recent date, and then you can see what's coming up next. So I don't know about you, but I've been to a lot of websites where you see the calendar and there's nothing for like the next year. So why even have a calendar up? So basically, this is one example, but if you don't have a calendar feature, think about, again, your feeds, anything that has a date associated with it, keep it up to date. Another important thing is items that don't necessarily have a date associated with it, but still need to be refreshed on, maybe not as often, but at least on a regular basis. So things like slideshows on your homepage or graphics within the site. This can be a little bit more high maintenance, but again, if people are coming to your site on a regular basis and there's nothing new and nothing fresh, it's just going to show that you're not doing new things, especially if the things in the slideshow or the graphics are timely. That's something else to think about too. If you're promoting an event or something else that you're doing, make sure that those, as soon as the thing is over, as soon as possible, try to update that so that you're not showing outdated content. So same concept. And like I mentioned earlier, this is definitely something that people get pretty overwhelmed by just because it obviously takes a lot of time, especially if you have, news feeds, calendars, all the stuff that we talked about, blogs, a bunch of stuff that you just feel like, oh, I cannot keep up with it. One thing to really consider is reducing it if needed. So if it's too much work to keep things updated, it's honestly best not to have it there at all. So one example of this is if you have access to not have, for example, a slideshow on your homepage and instead put up just a static graphic or something else, basically just reduce the amount of work that's needed if it's too much. It does feel like sometimes it's better to have a bunch of stuff going on, but honestly, it's more detrimental to your user experience if you have a bunch of stuff that isn't updated. So something to think about if that is an issue of keeping things up to date. Think about what's definitely needed and eliminate the things that aren't.
Donation pages. So going back to one of the most important things on your website, especially for an organization, for a nonprofit, or for any cause, you want people to donate. You want them to give you money. So how do we do that? There's a lot of research out there about form fields, and you really want to reduce the number of form fields that you have on your donation page. And the reason for this is the research shows that people are less likely to fill out a form if it's too long. And one study that researched this showed that the optimal number of form fields is 4. So if it's possible to reduce the number of form fields on your donation page to a smaller number like that, you're more likely to increase your actual transactions. And I recognize that with donation forms, it's a little bit more tricky because you're capturing information of billing and credit cards and all of that. So you do need that information. But a good example is, think about, do you necessarily need a phone number, for example? Do you necessarily need, maybe you don't need the city and state, because if you put in the zip, then you can pull that information. So, think about how to make your user experience a little bit more simple so that people go through with the transaction and they're not turned off by the fact that they have to fill out a really long form. Here is an example of a form that is very simple, and I really like it because that's all that's on the page except for the image, and it's just very clear. This is exactly what you need to fill out, and that's how you donate. So when you click the next, it will take you to the payment information, but this is a way to, get people in there and get them involved with the organization right out the get-go in a really simple way. And the other thing that I like about this page is it shows the secure right above the name. And I think that's great because it's building a little bit of trust with your constituents, and it's saying, you're giving us your information, but we are going to make sure that we are going to respect that information and not do anything like sell it. So keep the required form fields to a minimum as well. And this, it's not only for donation pages, but it's also for things like volunteer forms. So for example, I was talking about earlier, what information is actually needed to process the transaction. Think about that with your other forms as well. And one of the things that we talk about is if you can capture an email address. So if you just have, for your volunteer registration or perhaps for your newsletter, if you can just have them put in their name and their email, there are other ways to capture additional information as you build a relationship with that person. So getting them to sign up for an email or fill out a volunteer form is sort of the first step. And then you can build on by capturing address information and perhaps more personal information about what kind of content they might be interested in. All of that can be built on. And if you reduce the number of fields initially, you're able to kind of get their buy-in and start getting them in the door to get involved with the organization. So think about what's really required. What do we actually need to get from them to start off, and then build your information from there. Provide donation level options. We really like to talk about this here at Achieve because there's a lot of research, including our own, that shows that people like options. And not only do they like options, but they like options that tie to specific projects. So for example, if you say, $25 is going to help provide food for a kid for a month, that is a way to show exactly where their money's going. And it's also showing, wow, you're really making an impact in this kid's life by giving that $25. So when you're looking at your donation page, think about, are there small things like that, and keep the levels small. You want to have $5, $10, $25, $50, $100 levels, because most of the people coming to your website are going to be individuals, and that's probably the range that they're looking for. So if you have a range such as, 500, 1,000, all of that, you're going to lose people because it's not attainable to them. But if you can get that donor in at the $5 level, you have the opportunity to build on that as you build the relationship with that person. So think about your level options. Think about what you can tie that to and how you can make it clear what the money is going towards. And so this is the same website earlier, but it shows, clearly here's what you can give, and it shows smaller levels and larger levels. I don't know if it's even necessary to go up to the $1,000 level, but it shows, it probably depends on your organization really, but it shows, you can support us and you can get involved even for $15, and we really appreciate your support. Another thing that we've sort of been testing with a lot of our clients is monthly giving. So you could also have an option for, $5, but maybe it's $5 a month. And it's a way to let people invest into your organization over a long period of time rather than investing all of that money up front. Think about specific projects. So I mentioned this earlier as I was going through. One of the organizations that I really like is a health organization, and they have on their website, $5 gives balloons to a kid in the hospital. And it's a small thing, but it seems really neat to think, that $5 can really brighten a kid's day, and it incentivizes people, and it shows them, not only are you helping this kid, but you also get the benefit of feeling really great about what you did because you know what it's going towards. Reduce text and use more images. I'm sure we sound like a broken record at this point, but it's a great way to communicate more quickly with your users. So, when you go to a website, it's the same with donation page. You want to see the images. You want to see, who are you helping? What are you doing? What are your projects? And we like to talk a lot with our clients about, using faces. So when you think about the photos that you want to use on something like a donation page, try to find a face, get a close-up of someone that you've helped. Show them smiling, show them maybe doing something, interacting with one of your volunteers or one of your staff members. It's a very compelling way to get that emotional connection with the people on your website. So even if you look at your donation page and it's as simple as adding one image at the top of the donation page above the form, that could be enough. That could be enough to be a really compelling visual to say, hey, look, this is who you're helping. This is the person that you're going to touch by donating to our organization. Thank them. I love this one because it seems really simple, but it's so important and it's often forgotten, which is really unfortunate. But even the smallest donation, have an autoresponder or some sort of email that's sent to them that says, thank you, thank you, thank you for your donation. Make them feel special, make them feel appreciated. If you can, show them your projects and where the money is going towards. You also, this is a way to really generate buy-in to your organization. So if that person gives $5 and you thank them, you are building a relationship and you are building trust. And that person is going to remember that, and they're going to hopefully increase their donation moving forward. But don't think of any amount as too small, and be sure that you are connecting with them and really appreciating that they're giving to your organization. Another option for this, especially for larger amounts, is to write handwritten notes. And we like that here because it's a way to be really personal, but it's also really uncommon. So, for those larger donors, which probably aren't going to come through your website, but if they do, write them a handwritten note. It's special. It kind of makes you stand out, and it makes you have that, deeper emotional relationship with that donor.
All right, and finally, implement user testing. This sounds like a really big idea, but it's actually really, really simple. So a lot of big companies and organizations do full-blown research projects when they launch a new website, or just ongoing with their website, where they actually have people sit down and walk through the website and take specific actions. And then basically just so you can see how effective it is, how easy it is to navigate, how easy it is to find the information you need. So a really, really simple way to do this, because you are probably the people that are the closest to your website and constantly updating things, it's really, really helpful to ask someone outside of your organization, or sometimes even internally, someone that doesn't necessarily work on the website or look at the website every single day, to go through the site and tell you about their experience. So one way to do it is just sit down next to them, watch what they do, see if they get confused or lost or have questions, or see if things are broken, and just watch them, basically. A really good way to do this too is to actually come up with a few actions to take. So maybe think about 10 different things, like go make a donation for $10, or sign up to be a volunteer, or find out what happened a year ago on this day and see if they can find it back in your news feed or event feed. Just things like that. You can come up with just a simple list and provide them with that, and then sit down and watch them, see if it's an easy process, see how long it takes, and then get their feedback as well. You may find that people, for example, decide to go to a different area than you think they would for something. So maybe you need to rethink where your events calendar is on your site, is in the right section of the navigation. The basic lesson in all of this is sometimes what you think is the best way to do things may not be how people actually experience websites. So this is, again, a really simple, it doesn't need to be a gigantic project. Just ask a couple people to help. And this doesn't need to happen necessarily just one time, like when you launch a new website, or just a one-off thing. You can do this all the time, just maybe every quarter or so, because you're constantly making updates to the website, and because things are changing so much in this industry, usability and user experience best practices changes on a regular basis, just because technology is evolving and all of that. So do this on a regular basis, and again, just invite a couple people, whether it's internally or externally, to help you make it the best experience possible. And just going back to what we said earlier, this is, and as you know, or you wouldn't be here, really important. Having a website that is user-friendly and a good experience overall is very important to your organization. It's kind of summarizing all that we've been talking about, but it's really important that when people come to your website, they understand who you are, they understand your brand, and they're not directed away because of a bad experience or confusion or anything like that. So again, this is very simple, but really important when you're trying to make sure that your site is the most effective as possible.
Okay. So for the next 20 minutes or so, in this webinar, I'd love to hear from some of you so we can take questions if there are things specifically about your website that you're unsure about regarding images or messaging or donation pages or anything that we've talked about. We'd love to hear from you. So go ahead and type in your questions and we'll go from there. Real briefly, I'll just mention, yes, this PowerPoint will be uploaded to Achieve Access and you will be able to look at it in the future. We'll also have a recording of the webinar so you can watch through that again if that's helpful. Another person asked if there are screen captures or web addresses for the samples we showed. I'd be happy to send you a list of those websites and get you that information. So I will go ahead and email all of the attendees to this webinar that list. We got another question about how often should we refresh slideshows graphics on the site. So that really depends on your organization, and we definitely understand that budgets are limited and you may or may not have an in-house graphic designer, so it sort of depends per organization. But what we would recommend is set aside some time, maybe once or twice a month, to look at your website and say, are there upcoming events that we want to promote on our homepage? Maybe we need to take a look at our banners and promote maybe an important, if you're in an advocacy group, maybe an important political thing that's happening. Think about what is important to your organization and what's important to communicate, because that's your main venue to do that, is that homepage banner. So I would say if you could set aside some time once or twice a month to take a look at it and see what kind of things you could refresh or change, that would be helpful. And it doesn't mean you have to change it that often, but giving your website that kind of love and attention is definitely important. The other thing you just want to be sure about as you're changing graphics is think about your brand and think about making sure that it's reflective of who you are. You don't want to put different styles and typography and colors and change it often so that people are confused and you're not maintaining that same image of your brand. So just be sure that it's cohesive as you're changing the graphics and make sure they're relevant, valuable information for the people that are coming to your website. Here's another question. What are some key words or buzzwords that appeal to the millennial demographic? That is a great question. So that is basically what all of our research is about. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can definitely go to themillennialimpact.com and download our most recent report. Millennials are a different generation. They're an interesting demographic and they're unique. So what we would recommend is there's not necessarily specific keywords or buzzwords, but if you think about your website holistically and how to attract the millennial generation, you want to think about really building trust with them. So when we talk about millennials, the way that I kind of like to think about it is it's sort of like you're courting them. So, you get them onto your website, but then they're probably skeptical about your organization. Can I trust this organization? Are they professional? Do they show me their financials? And so it's sort of a long process to take a millennial through that relationship building and say, okay, we're gonna show you exactly what we do, and we're gonna show you exactly where your money is going, and we're gonna show you our financials. And it's a long process of building that amount of trust with millennials. So the more transparent you can be, the better. That's definitely going to generate some buy-in, and the more stories and showing, sort of proving, we're a legit organization and we have great projects. I don't doubt that all of you on this webinar have awesome organizations that you're working for, and so really it's just a matter of figuring out how you communicate that in a way to show your impact and that's how you're going to generate a lot of this trust and buy-in from millennials. So having that transparency on your website is important, and then by doing that on your website, then sort of the hope from there is that they also start following you on Facebook and Twitter, where you can share more information about your organization on a more frequent basis, so that they are building that relationship with you as well. With that said, also in our research, we found that millennials tend to only follow 1 to 5 nonprofits closely. So you're in a saturated market. You've got a lot of competing organizations for that millennial's attention. So the more you can show professionalism, the more you can show that transparency, and the more that you can really inspire the millennial through stories and images, the better you're going to be to really attract them to your organization. There's a question about stock photos. So someone asked where you get stock photos from, and asking about copyright infringement. And that's definitely a loaded question. So I'm glad you brought that up, because it's very important. So being small organizations can be tricky, because you want to use imagery, and sometimes you can't afford a photographer. So just take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, because I definitely recognize that. However, there is a lot of research around stock imagery and the fact that people aren't really going to connect with it as well as if they see your actual organization and your actual constituents. So if you can, the main recommendation that we would have is to hire a photographer, and this could maybe be like a yearly endeavor. Have them follow the people that you are actually helping, and follow your organization and your staff members. And people, the funny thing is people know when it's a stock photo. If they go to your website, they can recognize it, and it has like a sort of feel where people know that it's stock. So it's really better if you can get your own organization images, because you're going to generate, like I said before, a lot more trust and a lot more buy-in from your constituents that way. So that would be the number one recommendation, is get a photographer. And if you can do that once a year, then you have those photos all year long to promote through social media and in blog posts and on your website and new graphics and all of that. So it's really a great investment, and it's a long-term investment, because you're going to be able to have those permanently. So that's recommendation number one. However, if you're completely unable to do that and it's not in your budget and you need something right away, one website that I like, because it tends to be a little bit more, I guess, just artistic and softer and feels a little bit less stock to me, is Veer.com. So that's VEER.com. And we're not associated with them at all, but it's just a site that I tend to gravitate towards if I do need a stock image. So, if you have to use stock photos, I would shy away from using people stock photos, just because they tend to look a little bit more contrived. But if you want to, look for nature or textures or backgrounds or, buildings, architecture, all of that, you can sort of get away with a little bit more easily. And then to answer the second part of the question about copyright infringement, that's definitely something that you should be concerned about and pay close attention to. The last thing a nonprofit wants is a lawsuit coming their way. So this is an issue. Anything you pull from Google Images, you could be infringing on the copyright. So to be safe, I would just go ahead and purchase from stock imagery rather than pulling from Google. You could go through the process of contacting the person who has that photo and see if it's public use, but it's sort of more work than maybe is worth it. Stock imagery can be as cheap as a couple dollars up to, maybe $25. So it's really not a huge investment, and you're just sort of covering your bases if you just go ahead and purchase it rather than pulling from Google. With that said, there are some public domain images that you can use. So I would just say, do your research. If you're going to use something for free, just make sure that you have the rights and the permission to use it, because it's important. Other questions? might be it. I'll wait just a few minutes in case anyone has some last questions. Oh, I'm sorry. I missed one question here about a donation platform. So this person's referring to using Network for Good, and it's an inexpensive service, and it's difficult to control all of the features on the donation form. This is definitely tricky, and like I said before, it's difficult to navigate. What's the most important to invest into? Where do you put your dollars? What's the biggest thing that you want to make sure happens on your website? So if you do have a marketing budget and you do have a budget for your website, I would recommend to focus on your donation form. So if it's not working well, if it's difficult to control, if you're not able to update things clearly, if it's not user friendly, if you're going to invest dollars into your website, I would really highly recommend to focus on that first. And the reason is that's your livelihood. That's how you exist as an organization, is through those donations, and it's important. So if the platform you're using isn't good, start bidding it out. Just ask some other people to quote you on what it would cost to have a different donation form. And there are several out there. You could look at, like Bloomerang is one. There are a couple out there that cater to nonprofits specifically. So, but I would say, get a couple of quotes. Do some research, invest into it. I think you would find it's worth your time, because like I said, that donation form is your livelihood, and it's helping bring in dollars. And if it's not easy to use, then you're going to be losing people. And like I said at the beginning, the last thing you want is someone to come to your website and see the donation form, be intimidated, maybe it doesn't work, and then they just leave. So that's exactly what we don't want to happen. I'll wait just a few more minutes to see if there's final questions. If you have any questions specifically about your website, we'd love to hear some of that as well. All right. Well, it seems like we covered all of the questions, and just to reiterate, I will put the recording of this presentation on Achieve Access, and I will also put the PowerPoint, so you'll be able to download that and access it yourself. And I'm also going to put up our contact information here. Katie is new. She just started a few weeks ago, and she is our Director of Marketing and Client Services, but she would love to answer questions, and I would love to answer questions. So marketing related, probably go towards Katie. If you want more advice on visuals, you could email me. Either one of us would be happy to take your more specific questions about your websites and organizations. And I will also send that list of the examples that I showed in the webinar, so that you can take a look at some of those websites. And it's great to just poke around and look at examples of what people are doing, not just on the one screenshot that I showed, but look at their donation forms, look at their about pages, kind of go through and get ideas for things that might work well with your website. Thank you so much, and you guys have a great rest of your day.